Hi everyone, I'm Heidi Gardner and I am a clinical trials methodologist. So I basically figure out how we can do clinical trials better to make the evidence that we get from them more reliable and more useful to the people that are doing trials.
Hi, I'm Dylan and I'm a young STEM leader at Caldervale.
Hi, I'm Gerald and I'm a young STEM leader at Caldervale.
Hi, I'm Reese and I'm a young STEM leader at Caldervale High School.
Hi, I'm Callum and I'm a young STEM leader at Caldervale.
Does your industry have a gender stereotype?
So the industry that I work in is clinical trials, and we don't really have a gender stereotype within clinical trials at the moment, which is good. Lots of the people that I work with are from different backgrounds, and I'd say most of the people in my team are women, but my boss is a man. So yeah, it's a really mixed up industry, and that means that it's a really nice place to work because you get lots of different viewpoints as you're going through things.
Just for the people watching the video, Heidi, would you be able to explain a little bit about what clinical trials are?
So clinical trials are the best way that we have to figure out if something works better than something else. So say you take a painkiller when you have a headache. Firstly, you do that so that you know that it's safe and it's not causing the people that are taking it any harm, but also you use it to make sure that it's the best available thing to stop the pain. So when you're doing a clinical trial, what you're doing is testing one thing versus another. So you might test, pain drug A versus pain drug B, and the aim is essentially to keep both of the groups of people that you're testing that drug in completely equal, with the only difference being the drug, so that you can then see whether the pain is made, whether the drug has made a difference to the pain. So yeah, that's basically the reason why we do clinical trials.
Since you began working in your STEM-related career, in what areas have you seen the biggest changes?
So my STEM-related career started when I was about 16 or 17, I think, when I decided to go to university, and that was a big step for me because I didn't think I was going to go to the university that I ended up going to, and I didn't think I'd end up studying the course that I ended up doing. So that was a really big change for me. I was sort of hoping that I would go on to study medicine, and ended up not really getting the grades, and then moved to do pharmacology instead. But pharmacology actually turned out to be like the best thing for me. And then I did a PhD after that. So the biggest jump for me was finishing my undergrad and then going straight into a PhD and being sort of let loose to do research myself, which was a bit weird, but really good, really exciting. And then after I finished the PhD, that was another jump because you're then given a bit more freedom, where you're given research projects that you can work on yourself and you lead them and push them yourself. So they were the biggest jumping points for me.
Heidi, could I come in and ask you a question there? I really like what you said there, and I didn't realise. I was told a couple of years ago by someone, one of the biggest messages to get across to young people in school is you don't have to do a degree in medicine to work in medicine. And I think you're a brilliant example of that. Is that something that you would share that view, and maybe is there anything you could add to that?
Definitely. So I wanted to work with patients. That was my thing. So my first goal was that I wanted to make patients less sick. So the thing that you're sort of taught about at school is that you should go do medicine to do that. Like, that's how you make people better. But that wasn't really what I was not good at, but that wasn't really where I wanted to go. So you can work in medicine or around medicine in loads of different careers, more careers than you can if you have a medical degree. So yeah, there's loads of us that have come into this clinical trials industry specifically, and I don't know anyone that is working in my industry doing the job that I do that has a medical degree. We work with lots of people that do have medical degrees that are, they're doctors, they're consultants, they work in hospitals and they see patients all the time, but they're not doing the same job that we are. We work with them and use their skill set to further the work that we're doing.
Was there anything or any advice that you would give to other young people looking to get into a career involved in STEM, or sort of anything that helped you get into your career?
I think the main piece of advice that I would give to people looking, young people looking to try and get into a career in STEM is to take opportunities when they're given to you. So I had quite a narrow view of what my career might look like when I was younger, but I didn't actually know what my job is. I'd never heard of what my job is now when I was younger. So the fact that I now know what it is and I now do it was because I took so many opportunities that people gave me and just said, do you fancy trying this? And I said yes, and then tried it, enjoyed it, thought, okay, this is more of a career thing for me than maybe what I thought was going to be the career. So yeah, I think it's just take opportunities, try new things. None of the people that I work with have got the same track record. Like none of us did the same degree program. None of us have the same jobs before. We all have completely different experiences with where we've worked, what we've done, what degrees we've done, whether we've done degrees, that kind of thing. So it's just basically try new things, figure out what you like, and then find a career where those things all come together.
Hi Heidi. What has been your favourite or most rewarding moment of your STEM career?
The most rewarding bit of my STEM career? That's a hard question. Probably when I get to travel. So at the moment I work in an office, or I usually work in an office. Now I work at home, obviously, because of COVID. But when we have conferences and things, they're all around the world so that lots of people can come to them from different areas. So I've managed to travel to the US. We had a conference in Portland in Oregon a few years ago, and that was really cool. And probably the best one was in Cape Town. So I went out a week before the conference started. So I had like a little holiday at the beginning. And then we had this conference for a week, and then I stayed for a few days after to sort of explore stuff and see what was going on. And being able to do that as part of my job is probably the most rewarding thing, most exciting thing anyway.
What do you see as the biggest changes to come in your industry?
I think my industry at the moment is quite stagnant. Like we're trying to, so I try and make the way that we do clinical trials better. So how we recruit people into clinical trials, whether they stay in the trials with us until the end. And the thing that we have hurdles with a lot of the time is getting like ethical approval and regulations to fit with what we're doing, because often what we're doing is quite new and often the regulatory bodies don't really know how to deal with us. So I'm hoping that things will get easier, quicker and more streamlined as we go forward. And COVID's actually probably helped with that because things have to move quickly. So I've had some funding from big agencies in the UK, the government, and from charities and things to help do COVID related research, and that had to run really fast because otherwise obviously people would die. So they've managed to change the regulations to help with COVID, so I'm hoping that they'll continue to do that so that when I next go and try and get approval for a study, it'll be easier and quicker.
What opportunities helped you get involved with STEM?
I think in terms of getting involved with STEM when I was younger, I did like different clubs and stuff. So like my school had a science club, which was, they did kind of boring sciencey experiments. So I would try and find things that were like outside of that. I don't know, I guess things like making slime, like the science behind making slime, the science behind how a cake bakes, things like that would get me interested in stuff because it made me think like, okay, well that's science and it's not like sitting in a lab and putting, you know, something from one tube into another and seeing what colour it goes.
Do you think there's a specific moment or a reason that inspired you to choose your particular career?
My career is, it's still like a bit fluid. So I think when you get into a job, I think it's really important to bear in mind that you don't have to stay in that job forever. So even at the moment, I'm still like, well, this is my career now, but maybe in 5 years' time, it'll be completely different. So when I met my current boss, that was really cool because I just went out for a coffee with him just to see what he did and what he thought was interesting. So we just went out for a coffee, had a chat, and I was like, that's really cool, I want to do that. So now I do that. But it might be that in 5 years time, I don't do that anymore. So I think it's just really important to remember that they're fluid, and I might have a conversation with someone in a coffee shop in 2 years' time, and then I'll do what they do, and things will change.
Hi Heidi. Are there any areas or projects you would recommend for engaging in high school children?
I think getting high school children involved in science is really exciting, but it's also trying to get people to understand that science is not just what you think it is. So for me, science can be anything from like reading a book and critiquing the book. Like if it's non-fiction, say you read a newspaper article, for example, I now like go through newspaper articles and critique them. I can't stop myself from doing it because that's just what my job is. That's what I do all the time. So I then critique them and I'm like, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. And that skill that I have now is a science skill. And even being able to do that as a high school student would have been so useful to me in like my degree and at uni and things past there. But I think projects that my friends have had when they were at other schools and things, they did really cool things that my school just didn't do. So things like they were all given a Pringle and told that they had to post the Pringle back to themselves, and if it arrived not broken, then they'd won the challenge. So it was like these little challenges that you got set up. So they had to create some sort of packaging that meant that the Pringle wasn't broken by the time it had gone through like the Royal Mail system where stuff gets thrown around and stood on. Things like breaking an egg. Like we had a science teacher who really wanted to get people to understand like gravity and engineering, and that was kind of his thing. And he would have this challenge where he would drop an egg from the top of the school roof, and if it didn't break when it got to the bottom, then you won the challenge. So stuff like that I think is really cool because it's also like team building as well, and you get to sort of, it's not like copying out of textbooks, it's practical things that you can use when you're like with friends and stuff.
It's interesting that you're talking about different STEM careers. I wonder if you'd be able to talk a bit about science on a postcard and what that is. I'm not sure if the young STEMleaders know about that, if they've read up on you, I'm not sure.
Oh God, scary. Yeah, so Science on a Postcard is a business that I started about just over 3 years ago. I think we had our 3rd birthday a few months back. And it started because someone told me that I didn't look like a scientist, and it made me really angry. So I raged for a little bit. I whinged at my boyfriend. I like phoned my mum, was like, this is so annoying. Why do people not think I'm a scientist? And then I made this little pin badge. So I should have brought one actually, and I don't have one, but it's like a little enamel pin badge that you can just have like on your coat or on your backpack or whatever. And I made a bright pink badge that just said scientist on it, just to wear, just to have. But I could only order 50 of them, which was quite a lot. And clearly I didn't have like 50 coats to put pin badges on. So I sold them. So I sold I sold 49 badges, kept one for myself. And then people just kept asking me for stuff like, can you make researcher? Can you make oceanographer? Can you make marine biologist? Like all these different things. So now I think there's like 60 something different STEM career badges that I have. And I sell them on my website. I also have an Etsy shop. And I make like tote bags and notepads and things like that, just to sort of like, it's stuff that scientists can use that is not really boring and dry and like textbook looking. So it's all really brightly coloured and fun, and yeah, it's cute. So I use a lot of it in my everyday life, and then all my friends tend to use it because I make them. But other people buy stuff, which is nice. So it's a cute little sort of side project that I have, and you get business skills from that obviously as well, because I have to like file a tax return and all of that sort of stuff on top of my normal science job.
What impact has the pandemic had on your industry?
I think when COVID first hit, a lot of the trials that I know of or was involved in, they all got stopped straight away because we didn't want patients to be going into hospitals when they didn't need to. So often the trials that we run, they might be based in hospitals, so a lot of them will be surgical. So somebody has one type of surgery versus another, for example, but if they don't absolutely need that surgery, we were just like, okay, no, we're going to stop everything. So all of the trials that we were working on got stopped, which was good for some people, not very good for others. So it meant that like a lot of our staff went on furlough, and a lot of people started to work on different projects. So I had a project that I was working on that was not like on a trial, it was just sort of my little project, and I had 2 people that came to me and were like, we've got nothing to do, can we help? So it then meant that my project then got a bit bigger because I had 2 other people to help me, which was really good. And now as the pandemic sort of progresses, the trials have started back up again, but things have changed in the way that we collect data. So instead of having someone come into the hospital and have a nurse, like, you know, take their bloods, weigh them, take their height measurements or whatever, instead they might have an app on their phone that they can do the measurements at home, and then they just upload it to an app, so they don't have to go into the hospital and expose themselves to, you know, potentially illness. But for me, my day-to-day job is pretty much the same. I just work at home in my kitchen with my dog. So yeah, it hasn't really changed an awful lot for me personally, but the industry has changed.
Heidi, that's really interesting about, sorry to interrupt you guys, I'm just so interested, but I'll let you guys ask your question in a second, about the people collecting their own data on their phones and things like that. Does that make your life easier or harder when people are collecting their own data like that?
So when people collect their own data, sometimes it's really good and other times it's really bad. So sometimes, for example, like my granddad is currently in a clinical trial, and I told him, like, you're not going to a hospital. He's like in his 80s, so he's shielding and stuff. So he was like, right, I'm not going to the hospital. So my auntie is a nurse. She came around and took his blood sample and then posted the blood sample away, which was really good because it then meant that the research team got their data as they needed it. And he didn't have to leave. That was fine. But when it's patient reported things, so things like, as I mentioned, like taking your own height, taking your own blood pressure, taking your own weight, all those kinds of things, like things that might change, or that you might not do correctly if you're not trained on how to do it properly, it means that the way that we then analyze the data is really hard, because you have to try and like compensate for that. So if you're stood on the bathroom scale and it's not very good, or the floor's a bit wobbly, how do you then deal with that when the other person that's in the trial with you has not got that problem? So sometimes it's difficult. And we also have issues with like missing data. So in your trial, you want to have the most, because then obviously you've got the most evidence that you can use. But if people are doing it themselves, it's way easier to like just close the app on your phone and forget about it, or it's not as if you're traveling to a hospital to try and that big thing isn't there anymore. So yeah, sometimes you have missing data, and sometimes the data isn't as reliable as it is if the person's going into the hospital.
Do you think your job will change much in, say, like 20 years' time, or your industry, like you're talking about the data collection being totally different, or using an app? Do you think that'll have a bigger impact in the future?
I think my industry will change. I think there'll be way more apps, and even things like we can give a patient an iPad now to do, like a video conference or something like this, instead of people having to travel and all the money that goes into that, and like the environmental impact of people traveling to go places. We'll then do things differently because we've had to because of COVID. So we now know that we can do it differently. So I think that'll speed up. So things like the use of apps and technology and things will be huge. And I think there's an awful lot of really cool STEM stuff that's happening with like diagnostics and treatments and things that are being done with STEM. So like using a VR headset, for example, you can do that and use that within a clinical trial. And I think we'll start to test more of those types of what are they called, interventions. Yeah, we'll try and test more of those interventions to see if they make a difference to people's lives, because I think there's an awful lot of space that we could explore in that. So hopefully the industry will change like that in the next few years.
You spoke about how your intentions have changed from wanting to do medicine, but what got you interested? How did you hear about your current career? How did that change for you?
So when I first started uni, I was doing a pharmacology degree. So that's basically how drugs work within your body, like how your tissues, your cells, how they deal with new things that you put into the body. So what I did with that was a 5-year program. So in Scotland, all the degrees are 4 years. In England, usually they're 3. So mine was originally a 4-year program, but I also took an industrial year. So you take a year away from the uni after your 3rd year and go and work for a year. So usually you get paid, you work like a 9 to 5 for the whole year. And your undergraduate degree is then changed into a master's degree, which then means it's way easier if you want to do like a PhD or whatever afterwards. It means you don't have to then do that top-up master's on top. But I found my current career whilst I was doing that industry year. So I actually worked in an office for that year, and I worked in recruitment. So I was like trawling LinkedIn and all the job sites and stuff and phoning people and seeing if they wanted to come and work for us, and being that really and it's like, hi, this job, do you want to do that? And people would just hang up on me a lot. But it meant that I found my career. So once I went back to uni, I then only had 1 year to go before I was finished. But it meant that I knew exactly what I was looking for when it came to like PhDs or jobs or whatever after that.
Obviously, excluding COVID, what would you say the office culture or the socially your career was like?
So the office that I work in is an open plan office. So it's like one massive floor of a building. And I think there's 60 of us on that floor. and they're all kind of in like little pods. So you have 4 people in a little pod. So you get to know your pod buddies really well because you like share biscuits, and when you're angry, you'll go to like their desk and rent and that kind of thing. So that was really cool because it meant that I would like catch up and go for a tea break and stuff with people that I didn't actually work with day to day. And there's quite a lot of young people in my office too. When I first started, I was the youngest, and now I'm not the youngest anymore, which is very sad. But we all have like, we go to the pub on a Friday night, or we'll go to the cinema, and as soon as someone new starts, we all sort of like rally around them, and you'll have like more social events when the new person starts. But we definitely have like a decent social culture and stuff. There's people from all over the world as well. So one of my best mates from work is actually from Portugal. So she's like invited us out to go to Lisbon and stuff and stay with her family. So there's loads of, you meet so many new people when you're in a big open plan office like that, because people can't really avoid you. Like there's no barrier. You don't have to go and open an office door and say hi and it'll be all weird because people are just walking past you all the time. So yeah, my office is a really, really sociable place to be.
Do you think there's anything that would have helped you when you were younger to find your career path? Like if you sort of didn't know what you wanted to do or were going to do medicine, do you think there's anything that could have changed that was made it easier for you to get into your career that you're in now?
I think when I was younger, there wasn't really like many sort of initiatives, so I couldn't have spoken to different scientists or researchers to figure out what their jobs were. And that would have really helped me to figure out that like this was actually a job. I didn't even know that really research was something that you could do for like a whole career. And that would have really helped. And I think as well, it's cool now, even things like Netflix. So I'll watch Netflix now and I'll watch like a true crime documentary, or like, I don't know, like Making a Murderer, for example. I watched that and I was like, I'm going to be a forensic scientist. My boyfriend like was just like, no, you're not. Like you already have a job. You're not retraining. Stop being an idiot. But when I was younger, that would have probably made me go, oh, maybe I could work in science where I find like, you know, cold cases and things like that. So I think that the media is really good now, and even just like normalizing science in everyday life, TV shows, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think just figuring out what science is like in everyday life and what people do is really helpful.